Welcome, everyone, and thank you for all our speakers who are joining us from different parts of the world. This is the second webinar in a series on autonomous e-mobility prepared by Autonomous E-Mobility Forum, which has taken place and started in Qatar in 2024, and we'll see its second version in 2025. Today, we'll be focusing on the impact of autonomous e-mobility on land transport. We will also be touching upon its relationship with flying vehicles as well. So I would like to start by welcoming our speakers who are joining us from different parts of the world. Antonio Carvalho, who's joining us from Brazil. Baerte de Brey, who's joining us from Netherlands. Pavel Ondrias is joining us from Norway. Walid Meskine, he's joining us from Saudi Arabia. And our co-moderator, Professor Frank Himpel, he's joining us from Germany. Each one of our speakers would be introducing himself, and then we can go forward with questions and answers that will start by us as moderators, and then the public can share their views and their questions online through LinkedIn. Antonio?
Good morning, Elias, every colleague in this panel, the ones that are watching us in LinkedIn. As Elias said, I'm from Brazil. I'm at the moment the president of the Institute of Research and Urban Planning of Maceió, which is the capital city of Alagoas, one of the states here in Brazil. I'm also the president of the National Association of Local Secretaries of Innovation. I have a background in political science and governance and development. I also had done a major in future intelligence, prospective strategy, and public policy. And I had the opportunity also to study at Harvard Kennedy School of Government in an executive certificate of public policy. So it will be really, really interesting to be here with you guys discussing such an important topic. We know that e-mobility and autonomous vehicles are two hot topics in the world, because we see e-mobility as an alternative for mobility around the world, and also it is important and very compiling that cities has to think about autonomous vehicles and how it interacts with people. So thank you, Elias. Thank you, Pavel, Baerte, Walid, for this opportunity to be here with you. And Frank.
Right. Baerte?
Yes, hi. Hello, everybody here in the panel, and of course, everybody watching on LinkedIn. My name is Baerte de Brey, and I work for a Dutch grid operator. In the Netherlands, some years ago, when e-mobility arose, grid operators united in a platform called ElaadNL, where we tried to integrate e-mobility into the energy system. So, of course, electric vehicles not only have to be charged, but the energy transition asks much, much more of this charging of vehicles. It asks integration with generation of sustainable energy by rooftop solar or wind energy. And that is what we work on at ElaadNL. The good, safe, and secure charging of electric vehicles. For this, we developed some standards and protocols, and we're best known for developing OCPP, Open Charge Point Protocol, which is de facto the global standard for charging electric vehicles. See it a little bit as the Wi-Fi for charging electric vehicles. Well, since this is a globally adopted protocol, I travel a bit, and therefore I was asked by Avere to become their vice president. Avere is the European Association for E-Mobility. This is a very good example of the full integration of all the aspects of e-mobility, autonomous driving. We have members as grid operators, charge point manufacturers, but also car manufacturers such as Tesla. And yeah, it's important that this new topic, e-mobility, autonomous driving, is not only technically developed, but also integrated in regulatory standards, in my case, in European legislation. So thank you for joining this webinar. Looking forward to the discussion.
Thank you, Baerte. Pavel?
Hi to everyone from Oslo, Norway. My name is Pavel, and I'm working with EV consultation. I'm in EV market from 2017, and I can call myself at least as advanced user. And I test all the EVs possible to try on a Norwegian EV market. And I'm also interested so much in EV infrastructure and chargers.
Thank you, Pavel. And Walid.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Elias. Thanks all colleagues, and a lot of thanks of Autonomous Mobility Forum for this initiative to connect and reconnect again with such experts. I'm Walid Meskine, Advanced Science Engineer with a master's degree in robotics and AI. Really passionate with air mobility and advanced air mobility especially. I'm actually a business development professional in unmanned aviation, co-founder of Envodro, which is a drone company developing hardware and software, business development manager at TWAIQ, which is a drone service company in Saudi Arabia, and co-founder also of Africa Flying and Engineering. It's a drone training company in North Africa, trying to cultivate this new area of new transportation ways in both roads and air, with integrating for sure the new, let's say, brand of AI and sensors and IoT and connecting things. I'm pleased to be here, and I will thank so much our audience in LinkedIn.
Professor Himpel, the floor is yours.
Yes, thank you so much. Welcome, everyone. A warm welcome, everyone, from my side as well. Elias, I go first, then you go second in introducing us as co-moderators. I'm the director of the Institute of Logistics at Anhalt University in Germany. I also have a hat as a non-resident fellow of InStrat, which is a Doha-based think tank. And last but not least, I'm very happy and pleased to participate in this forum as a member of the executive committee of the AEMOB forum. As Elias already indicated, we had a first forum taking place physically, which was a great success. And we are very pleased to welcome all of you again to the second webinar.
Right.
Elias.
Well, we have a lot of experience in
Yes.
in 1 hour to be able to squeeze the brains of all those present and try to understand and learn more about autonomous e-mobility. I'd like to start by opening up a subject in relation to the first question that would come to mind for anyone on the road that would ride into an autonomous vehicle. What kind of safety, what kind of safety measures, what are the safety standards? How would these can be controlled? What kind of policies, procedures need to be put in place? And how do we trust? So I'm going to ask the question to more than one speaker at one time, and probably each one of our speakers can answer from his own experience. Baerte, I'll start with you, considering your experience in the relationship between electrification and autonomous mobility. If you can shed the light on the risk and how can that be mitigated by regulators and governments. And then I'll move to Antonio, because Antonio, also from an urban planning perspective, you would need to shed the light on this particular factor.
Yeah, well, thank you. I think there are many similarities between electrification and autonomous driving. What we've seen at the electrification of vehicles is, first you have the technical development. And of course, there's a lack of regulation, lack of clarity sometimes for developers, whether it's vehicles or charging stations. And sometimes people complain a little bit about that, but I think it's a good thing, because if we regulate everything in a very early stage, you kill innovation. First, let technicians do their job. Different markets, Europe, America, South America, the Middle East, also have some different requirements. So let the innovation, the technical innovation, do its job. But after that, for scaling up new techniques, whether it's electric vehicles, autonomous vehicles, or electric autonomous vehicles, I think for scaling up, there's a need for some standardization. And that should be done by markets, not necessarily by governments. But if you see a market standard which is widely adopted, then a government could step in, whether it's a national government or a European Commission or other governments, to set quality standards to protect the users on safety, on security, but also quality aspect. So I think there's a timeline which you can always see: first technical development, innovation, then a little bit of standardization, and after that regulation to protect the users. So yeah, maybe I'm happy to hear what Antonio thinks.
Antonio, do you agree that markets should come in first, and then regulators and governments would come in to put rules and controls? Wouldn't that be too much, or they shouldn't be going in parallel?
I agree in some point with Baerte, because as we are talking on unknown land, let's say, let's name it like that, we have to be very careful not to make legislation kill the innovation, kill some aspects of it. If we go, for example, for AI, that's something we should think about it, consider as well, because of the importance innovation has in the area. But I think that urban planners must ensure that AVs operate within a safe environment. So legislation can foresee AV-friendly road designs, can look for clear signage, well, the maintenance of roads should also be something that is on site. And also we should bring AVs integrated with other forms of transportation, because we know that at first we will have like AVs going together with other forms of transportation. And also we have to think about also our public transport in order to create a cohesive, safe urban mobility ecosystem. So when it comes to safety and the role of urban planners, I think is to foresee these possibilities and enhance and promote this integration within different transports models.
So I have a question here for Mr. Meskine. In this case, at what stage, in your opinion, at what stage should automated drone transport systems be introduced within the urban planning cycle while we are introducing new technologies to be used by the public?
Thank you, Doctor, for this question. So, integrating the new air mobility in the advanced urban mobility, let's say, it's no longer a science fiction, but there is a lot of use cases and experience I think, in 100 places in the world right now. This approach is very similar to the road urban design, because when we will design the new road transportation, it needs to be upgraded accordingly to the new technologies of vehicles, new connected vehicles, new electrical vehicles. And the common point between air mobility and road mobility or road transportation, it is the centralized management system. So we know that all aircrafts, drones or manned aircrafts are managed by one centralized managed system where all vehicles or aircrafts communicates between each other to to ensure the real time decision making. Just we need to implement this centralized management system on our roads. And as my perspective, that will be much easier, because the issue and the challenge in the air mobility is the communication and the data links, which is almost wireless. But when implementing this centralized management system in roads, we have almost of communication wired. So we could have real-time data transfer and data processing, and we could handle a huge load of data to get real decision making. So, and I could call it, we could make our near future roads communicating with vehicles.
Yes,
So
but at what stage, Walid, at what stage such systems would need to be introduced? I mean, I'll give you an example. I live in Doha, in Qatar. I also drive an autonomous vehicle, but I don't use its features, or at least I don't use the most important feature, which is full automation, because we're still at the very early stage of preparing road infrastructure for public use, which is basically on purpose in order to make sure that we don't have unforeseen events on streets. So at what stage during the planning, or during, if I'm in the business of autonomous mobility and I want to invest in this business in a certain country, at what stage governments would need to come in and start giving this this cushion of confidence to the public that now we have automated road transport systems, we have policies, procedures, controls that would be able to support you and would be able to transform into a legal structure whereby at any time you have an incident, you know, there's a specific article in the law that you refer to, you can go to court or you can protect your rights. So at what stage, and I don't know if only Walid or any one of our speakers would like to come in and answer this question, because this is very important in terms of liability. And I'm an insurance person. So when it comes to risks and liability, where would the public go to for protection? Are there specialized courts? I mean, what would need to be done?
Yeah, thank you for the clarification, Doctor. We call it here maybe performance-based approach against or risk-based approach when making regulation and the new frameworks. And we all understand the challenges facing the government to implement this in a real case. And such here in Saudi Arabia, we have a prototyping city in Jeddah, where we test autonomous vehicle in a closed area. This prototyping could be then extended to a bigger area and to cover all the country or the zone. That's the performance-based approach now by prototyping and extending. And I think this is the common case in several cities around the world, unless we faced some incidents. The last incident of the accident of car in US that's framed the development. But the stage is soon. We are now in business case is more advanced than regulation. Just now we need more than upgrading the infrastructure, also upgrading some regulation and rules.
Maybe I can add.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yes, a little experience from Dutch practice. In the early years of electric vehicles in the Netherlands, the Netherlands is very densely populated and not everybody has its own driveway. So people park in the street and we need curbside charging. 15 years ago, there was a lot of debate at platforms like this. Who should be responsible for people stumbling over charging cables? Whole conferences. Is it the EV driver? Is it the municipality? Should it be the charge point operator? The one of the standing there. And in reality, there weren't many big lawsuits. Years later, the lesson learned is you can have all conferences in advance who is responsible for anything. And that is maybe a little bit of Dutch culture. Just start deploying charging infrastructure and have best practices instead of regulating everything at first hand, because making regulation requires some time, 2, maybe 5 years before you can start. You can also have a little bit of trust in each other. And as I mentioned in my first introductory round, you need a little bit of innovation. And innovation requires collaboration between parties, market parties, but also a government that gives a little bit of trust. And of course, regulation is needed for pure protection of the customer or protection of small startups against very large conglomerates. But the Dutch practice, the lesson learned I want to showcase here is start and then learn instead of regulate everything at first hand, because that will kill innovation, in my opinion.
Pavel, do you agree? And what's the experience in Norway?
Yeah, I fully agree with Baerte, what he mentioned. It's same way in Norway. From beginning, of course, government make some regulation, watch market, what is happening on market with EVs and infrastructure. But later on, they found out that it's better cooperation. So what happened? They have been asking questions to consumers, and they have been asking what do they need and what do they think supposed to happen in near future. The best communication between government and users, EV users or public, is association. It's kind of group which is made for EV users, and they are sending messages, emails to government with pictures. Sorry, not to government, to that association, And that association after can communicate with government. They can sit together and find out what can happen in the near future. For example, regarding EV infrastructure, I think it's most important thing before you will flee a market with so many EV vehicles from around the world. What is happening, especially in new markets? There is no EV infrastructure, and a lot of people after they think, why should I buy electric vehicle while there are no petrol stations? Yeah, so there is first need as I think number one, it's EV infrastructure. If there is not EV infrastructure, it's really difficult to go forward. Yeah, it will be just more difficult for market.
Dr. Himpel, you have Professor Himpel, you have. I'm sure you have an input and comments on all this. Although you're a moderator, but I want to ask you the question.
Thank you so much, Elias. Yes, like in general, what we see, not only as part of this technology, but also as part of other technologies disseminating into the practice, is exactly what Baerte and Pavel already introduced, that regulating in the beginning might actually harm the dissemination of technologies. Now, of course, for some technologies, we like to have some technological foresight. We like to have some view on the future in order to what expect for society, for customers, for entrepreneurs who get into this type of industry, also for established businesses. So yes, to some extent, we like to see some view into the future, but that does not necessarily mean that regulation upfront will be a good help. And I agree with the two gentlemen that in order to disseminate new technologies, we have to work together to disseminate those technologies into specific markets and then develop regulations all along. So that is maybe a view from academia or from academic experience.
When it comes to when we move more deeper into technology and technology risks when applying or when using automated vehicles, where do we need to worry? I mean, Baerte, I know you've spoken about cybersecurity. I'm sure, Antonio, you face these questions every day in Brazil, in the communities that you are servicing, and at United Nations Committee. Walid, in urban planning, you probably also come into this question. So who's gonna volunteer and give me some thoughts into this?
Yeah, maybe I'll kick off. Cybersecurity is very, very important at the moment. E-mobility is, of course, part of the vital infrastructure. People need to go to the office every day. Supermarkets have to be supplied by transportation, electric transportation, and in the future, maybe by autonomous vehicles. And yeah, unfortunately, there are malicious hackers active, individuals, organizations, even stately actors at the moment. From a European perspective, I know the European Commission is really on top of this, apart from national governments. Last year, the European Commission had the Network and Information System Directive in rule, which is legislation that national governments in Europe have to implement, I think this year, making a lot of, it's kind of an umbrella legislation for cybersecurity. So it covers not specific topics, e-mobility, but a really broader range, also energy infrastructure. So that is regulation in place. National governments have to implement it, so you can't be hacked. And I'll give some examples how this works in e-mobility. For example, for charging stations, companies like Elaad, my company, can check if charging stations are cyber secure. That means that they don't have open USB ports where you can put in a USB stick with and with that try to control the charging and the charging network, get into the back office and hack it that way. Also, you have to do with some repetition once a year, once every half year, some pen testing if your software is up to date. So the regulation is in place, and companies specialized in this can help charge point operators, car manufacturers to check if they're cyber secure. What is lacking still is the enforcement. If your company is not cyber secure, and we detect a possible hack or a possible hack attempt, how can we enforce that you're up to speed? Because it can have a very, very big impact on, transportation company, individual EV drivers, but also the electricity grids.
Yeah.
May I jump in?
Of course.
Of course.
Well, I think that this is something very important when it comes to also thinking about integrating public transportation. And as Baerte said, this backups, these redundant services, this everything that we can do to keep functioning the systems, and also to preventing from a attack that can compromise the integrity of people and so on, is very important. And also, when designing legislation, public services, governments shall think on ways of preventing this type of attacks. And we have a lot of technologies that help avoiding cyber attacks and cyber compromises. We know that each day hackers and cybercrime people are getting better. But I think that our security systems and also our preventing people are also improving a lot. So we think we have to develop a service. We have to think in mobility as a service, in a platform that can incorporate these e-mobility options, these AVs and other models. But while designing it, we should already think about on backups and preventing measures that can help the city to avoid any compromise in integrity of people.
Yeah, it's not easy.
Yeah, fully
Let me just
agree.
add one point.
Yes, go on, please. Regarding the cybersecurity.
Yes, let me just add one point.
Okay,
Please.
go ahead, Dr. Himpel.
Yes, let me just add one point that is also the purpose of this forum, which is to include questions from our audience. And at this point, I just like to throw in one question from Najiba Bukemija, which is about data ownership, data protection. And Najiba's question is, what is the level of frequent protection? Is it more about legal protection of data? Is it more about internal and managerial protection of data? And Najiba is also asking a question about patenting, about how to grant patents. Is the basis for granting patents only about novelty or absolute novelty, or about technical novelty? So I'd like to put these questions from the audience. Thank you, Najiba, to our esteemed panelists, please.
Yeah, thank you. I will connect the question of
Yeah.
Dr. Najiba
Yes.
with the cybersecurity issue. So regarding cybersecurity, we have mostly two types of data classified based on the impact. We have the real-time data that communicating between vehicles and the already registered data, which is just data used to perform or to study. The impactful harm or hack will be sure in the real-time data that could really threaten the navigation system. And we have a very successful use case, which is the aviation phase, because we know all planes are flying and most of communication is wireless. And the wireless communication is the most vulnerable to be hacked. And fortunately, we have about zero incident or zero accident in data hacking or data threaten. We are flying usually every day safely. And that proves that technology in data protection, communication protection is successful, and we could just project that in 2D navigation on roads. For the other data of the daily navigation, which is registered, I think it's not a big threat because it is already shared in Google Maps and in other websites of navigation through web scramming or other technology. So as my perspective, no very serious threat regarding the data in road transportation in the near future.
Right. Are there more
Yeah,
questions?
regarding the question on patents, there are two schools. One is a little bit traditional, that individuals or individual organizations develop something, patent it, and try to become rich, want to be a millionaire out of that patent. That is a little bit the business case from the past, and of course we still see it nowadays. An example is years ago, I think 15, 20 years ago, there was a company who said, well, I patent the idea of a charging station, a connection with an electricity cable and then a socket on it, and that is my invention. Well, American courts said, well, that is too global, too undefined, and not worth a patent for it. And of course, in this time of, and that is the second school of ideas about around patents, there's so much going on. There's so much innovation going on that it takes quite some time to do the patenting. And then, of course, protect it, monopolize it, market it, because if you want to have a patent, you want to be the monopolist to get very rich out of that. And innovation is going much too fast for that at this moment. And a clear example of that is one of our members at Avere, Tesla, who of course has a little bit of intellectual property, but shares it, open standards and open protocols. That's what we also do at ElaadNL. We protect our intellectual property, but we don't try to monetize that, because we think we're in this for innovation and, of course, make a sustainable future, which is affordable for everybody. So two ideas of an approach, maybe also a bit of difference between two continents, more patenting in America, with Tesla as an example of a more European approach of sharing your intellectual property to make the benefit for all and try to spur innovation.
Thank you, Baerte. Now we have another question coming up from our guests. And that I would like to pose that question to Pavel. Please, the question is, what are the key challenges in updating existing laws to accommodate these advancements while ensuring public safety and equity?
Thank you so much. So I will answer this question on examples from Norway regarding public safety and equity on, let's say, EV infrastructure for charging, public charging. So from beginning, there haven't been so many regulations on EV charging and on EV cars. It's really important to make at least a small regulation regarding it, because EVs are not same like petrol cars. They have different plugs, they have different ports, and different speeds for charging and different batteries. If I mention chargers, we have AC chargers, which I have currently here next to me. This one is example from NextBlue. It's home charger, but you can make it also as a public charger. And after you have DC chargers, they are fast chargers over 50 kilowatt, and they are used mostly for long range driving. I don't have any example here because they are huge boxes and I cannot bring it to this room. And like I mentioned, for example, plugs, there should be also regulations about plugs. This is type 1 for slow charging. And most common European plug, it's type 2. Both examples are from Meskine, from Germany. And if I mention this public charging, but also home chargers, in Norway, it's not that long time ago, approximately 1 year ago, it's not allowed anymore to charge on your normal socket plug, like this charger. It's only in a case of emergency, because what is happening with sockets, they are not with dimension over 10 or 13 ampere for long-term charging. So that was one of regulations which came from government, and actually it was also a question from insurance companies, because there have been few fires regarding sockets, but also charging cables, because they overheat after a long term. In normal temperature, around 25 degree, the socket is heating to 35 degree. You can try it or see it with this type of devices. It's for heating. Yeah, you can see temperatures. And if you cannot see it by your own eye, but you can see that the sockets is really heated and it can melt and it can be destroyed. Yeah, in the worst case, it will cause even fire for vehicle, your garage, or even properties. So there should be regulations and checking for safety regarding public chargers or even private one. Because a lot of people nowadays, they don't know yet differences between this type of chargers, what it can offer you, yeah, what type of speed, for example, of your charging, but also what is negative case or scenario if you, for example, charge for long term with some socket which is not with dimension for long term charging. So there are some regulations, and I think it's good for safety, for public, but also for your equity.
Thank you, Pavel. We appreciate it. I would like to pass on basically the same question about accommodating those advancements to Antonio, please.
Thank you, Frank. I will focus on the equity side. I think that legislation should ensure that the benefits from e-mobility and AVs are equitably distributed across all communities, mainly in those that are underserved areas, because urban planners must address the potential disparities in access to these new transportation technologies, and we should ensure that our residents benefit from this cleaner and safer mobility options. So while applying public transportation, we should think about using, and we should think about the integration of systems. So this is legislation, as the question brilliantly asked, shall accommodate and integrate mainly this into the society, looking for those underserved communities.
Appreciate. And so next, two questions from the audience. I would like to pose or both questions to Baerte, and then maybe have one or two of our esteemed panelists to join in answering those two questions. Baerte, those two questions are that the European Commission advocates a ban on conventional vehicles from city centers by 2050. And the question is if you consider that realistic. The second question is, are there any ethical considerations? The second part of the question is, are there any ethical considerations that should guide the development of policies and legal frameworks, as your opinion?
Yeah. Well, the first question is banning combustion engines, conventional vehicles from cities. Very realistic. In 2025, January 1st, the 40 biggest cities in the Netherlands will ban polluting vehicles. And it is not only for greenhouse emission targets, but also air quality. Of course, the exit fumes from vehicles pollute, people get lung sickness. So that is the reason. So we're doing this in the Netherlands. Keep in mind that it's ambitious, realistic, because the vehicles are on the market. You can purchase them. But you also have to have a planned idea for charging infrastructure, and not only passenger vehicles. I mentioned curbside charging. Not everybody has its own driveway, but also fast charging for example, buses, depots of supermarkets, etc. And being a grid operator, today it's August, so we only have 4 months to connect all these chargers. You have to be timely. So if you have this ambition for 2025, involve your grid operator to connect all those chargers needed for charging the vehicles. And well, 2025 is a bit fast for the Netherlands, but well, we like to be efficient in time. 2050, as the person in the audience mentioned, that gives us over 25 years to install all charging infrastructure needed to have all car manufacturers providing the electric vehicles needed for that. So 2050 is very, very realistic. I would even say it's not so ambitious of the European Commission. Then the second question, ethical questions. I think you have to consider what kind of organization you want to be, what kind of a government you want to be. Do you want to be very monopolistic, or do you want to create an open market where you have competition? And if you have an open market, facilitate that. In the Netherlands, we don't have very, very big car manufacturers. We don't have very, very big energy companies. So designing the policies, the ethical ideas, was creating possibilities for small startups, mom and pop stores to develop. And that means, creating, as I mentioned, a system for openness in the market. That as a first idea on ethical questions. Pavel.
can I add something to the first question regarding European Commission, that they want to ban vehicles until 2050? I can give you an example from Norway. There was a long time ago decision that until 2025, which is next year, will be banned sales of petrol cars, and I think it's a nice vision or interesting vision, but I don't think there is need for it, because market will speak to Norwegian market. Last month, for month July, 92% of newly sell car have been only electric, fully electric. So I think even if it's not 100%, or let's say we will make it 95, I think it's more than enough, yeah, from these beginnings. And imagine that only 45 fully fossil fuel cars have been sold for last month in whole Norway, whereas 5.5 million people. Yeah, so it's big change in Norwegian market, and I think a lot of countries can learn from environment regarding electric cars or e-mobility in Norway.
Thank you, Pavel and Baerte. There is another question coming in from the audience from my friend Yvonne Winter. Yvonne is asking the questions, how do you see conductive charging systems? And she suggests that plugs are always getting weaker over time. So maybe, Pavel, if you could start, what's your take on Yvonne's question?
Yeah, so hi, Yvonne. I think plugs and their cables should be separate, or as much as possible repairable. That's why I like, or I prefer, chargers which they don't have integrated cable, because in case of damage, like we have been talking about cables which can be heated or driven, like in examples in Norway, in Netherlands from Baerte, you can just unplug cable and replace it with new one. You don't need to call any maintenance, any service. You can do it by yourself, and the cost will be only cost of new cable. While if you have already plug cable, which is part of charger, and I can see most, over 90% of chargers are like that in Qatar or in Middle East. After, you have to call your maintenance services and companies to replace it. I think this is the easiest way, because it's possible also to recycle that part, while if you have whole charger, it's more difficult. Yeah, that is my point of view on it. But of course, every user can prefer different type of chargers or cables, plugs or ports. But I think this type of chargers are much easier for user, because also what can happen if you have cars with different type of ports or chargers, you can exchange plug. You don't need install 10 chargers with different plugs with different length of cables, while you can have only one type of charger with socket, with port, and you can keep there whatever cable you need. Yeah, it's much friendlier, user-friendly to all EV users. I hope I answer at least a little bit that question.
Thank you,
what we see in our test lab in the Netherlands at the ElaadNL, where we test a lot of chargers and electric vehicles, is that the wear and tear of cables, just as Pavel just showed, that isn't the biggest problem. Attached cables to charging stations, well, of course, with severe weather circumstances in Norway, it can be very, very cold. Where Walid lives, it can be very, very hot. That does something to the wear and tear. And charge point manufacturers also see this and build modular devices. So if a cable or a plug is broken, you can easily switch it with low cost. I recall the UC Davis, a university in Sacramento in California, did a lot of research on the uptime of charging stations in America. And in America, by law, cables have to be attached, and the uptime of charging stations is not as good as in Europe. It's only 75% or something, and which is frustrating because you arrive at a charging station and you want to charge, but well, it's broken. And one of the reasons was the attached cables, because, well, I mentioned weather circumstances, wear and tear, but also people sometimes, well, don't replace the sockets back to where it belongs, and it breaks a little bit. So from the back of my mind, research by UC Davis in Sacramento says something about this.
If I can add to that, like you have been saying that there have to be cable by that regulation, you can plug here cable and close it. Yeah, it can be attached forever with it. It's in most companies with this type of chargers that you can attach it, and it can be working as public charger. It can be free. It can be pay service. Yeah, it's up to where you will use it, the type of charger. Yeah. So if there is that regulation, it's possible to make even a charger which is without removable cable, to make it as fixed cable into the charger. So there is solution.
Thank you, Baerte
minutes.
and Pavel. There is another question coming in from the audience, going back to the topic of ethical considerations. And this second question is narrowing the focus of ethical consideration in being taken into account in the creation of legal frameworks, with particular focus on scenarios where artificial intelligence decision-making impacts human safety or possibly human safety. Antonio, may I give this one to you first, please?
Sure. I think that we, as I was saying early on, I think that AI is still a field that we are exploring, and we are bringing up it to our reality, adapting it to our reality. So I think that creating any frameworks that kind of block its development is something we should be very careful of, because as it is an innovation and as it is in a unknown field, I think we should be very careful when trying to legislate that. And how can we avoid like these technologies to harm or to let's say to bring impact to human safety? We should use a tool we have already, which are sandboxes, to test those technologies and trying to have small spaces where they can be developed, tested, and in different scenarios, which is something that is already going on in some places. So what I would recommend, or what I would think of doing, is establishing these sandbox spaces to test the technologies and to bring them to its, let's say, to its limits, so we can understand where and what they are. And after that, we design frameworks that could like enhance its potential and also promote human safety.
Thank you, Antonio. Elias?
We're running out of time. We ran out of time. We passed the our end of the program by 1 minute. So we'd like to thank everyone who participated. I'd like to remind you that we still have one more webinar as part of Autonomous e-mobility forum series of webinars, and that in 2025 we'll have a full-fledged in-person forum taking place in Qatar, and we'll be happy to see you all if you join. One more thing, I mean, we are in insurance, and everything that you've said involved us. The fire at the house, the cybersecurity, the car going bust, urban planning, involvement in design, wrong design, errors in design. There are so many risks associated with e-mobility and autonomous e-mobility, and we're deeply involved in risk management aspects and insurance related in this particular space, and we're happy to do this. That's why I'm so excited, and I want to thank the committee of AEMOB and the organizers for involving me and inviting me to be a moderator on this session. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for all the participants, and goodbye.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Too.
Thank you. Bye.
We have one more comment. We have one more comment from the executive committee. Just to explain a little bit, Elias, that you're all cordially invited for the next AEMOB forum to physically take place in Doha. Our first forum that we conducted this year in May was a great success, and we were all looking forward to physically you to Doha next year. Platform for exactly what you've seen to we're experts on various levels. We do not know everything, but we try to share the knowledge. We try to create a forum, a platform for dialogue, a platform for cooperation, so that we all learn from one another, that we all can learn from one another's experiences, from one another points of views, because autonomous e-mobility as a technology is advancing fast. And we believe that if we connect, or if we provide a network, professional network, we will all gain from it in all corners of the world. So the dialogue that we aim to bring about is about the future of innovation, the future of technology, and the future of policy. And we aim to set up this network in a multidisciplinary, interdisciplinary way, because we feel that it is, of course, engineers, it is business people, but it is also people coming from like the social sciences and other disciplines to contribute. Today, we have seen some aspects from the legal side. We have seen some aspects from the technology side. In the future webinar, maybe we will discuss the factor of social acceptance, of customers accepting that technology, because without customers accepting the technology, there might not be a big market. So we need to also include the views of like psychologists and domains. After all, AEMOB is also designed to be an interdisciplinary platform. And we aim to do this again by providing webinars, conducting webinars to a larger audience. And also, thank you very much from my side, Elias. Thank you for co-moderating this with me. Thank you, Pavel. Thank you, Walid. Thank you, Baerte. Thank you, Antonio. We really appreciate it.
More than welcome. Happy
And
to
also, I'd
help.
like to say a thank you. Appreciate Baerte. And we'd also like to say a thank you to Daniel and Amal, who have been of big help from like the technical back end. We have not seen them today on camera, but Daniel and Amal, thank you so much for all your valuable contribution. This was my thank you to all of you, and we're looking forward to seeing you on September 10 for the third webinar. Thank you so much.
Thank you, guys. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
And thank you to audience that they stay with us.
Bye-bye.